There is a really cool detail about lightsaber technique coming up in the next episode of Ahsoka. In the next episode, Sabine Wren and Shin Hati have their fateful rematch on the world of Cetos, where we last saw Ahsoka and Sabine land at the end of episode 3. Although we have little footage about this duel, only knowing that Marok and Ahsoka will also be dueling simultaneously to this one, I wanted to break down a lightsaber technique that I found interesting and speaks a lot to the characters of Sabine and Shin. Dave Filoni and the crew before have spent massive details on lightsaber combat. The thing that comes to mind is Obi-Wan Kenobi and Maul on Tatooine, where we see Obi-Wan and Maul cycle through the opening stances of various lightsaber forms in order to attempt to throw off the other. Kenobi opens with the classic stance of Sarisu, and later switches to the mid-level of Shi-Cho. Ultimately, in the end, he chooses the lightsaber form that his master Qui-Gon Jinn used, and transitions to the opening stance of Form 4, Ataru. This is of course to attempt to trick Maul into going for the same maneuver that he used against Qui-Gon Jinn. However, this time Kenobi was ready for it. So what does this all have to do with the next episode of Ahsoka? Well, if you look at the opening stances of Shin and Sabine, you can see that they mirror one of the stances that Kenobi took. That is the opening medium stance of Shi-Cho. Shi-Cho being the first form of lightsaber combat. This makes sense as Shin and Sabine are very much still on the Padawan level. Shin even has her own Padawan braid, and Sabine has not trained for some time, meaning that likely the form that the two of them would be the most familiar with would be Shi-Cho. But just because Shi-Cho is the first and most basic of all 7 lightsaber forms does not mean it is weak at all. In fact, Jedi Council member Kit Fisto was famous for being a master of Shi-Cho, with many calling him one of the most dangerous lightsaber duelists that the Order had ever produced, him being only one of 2 Jedi to survive the initial onslaught of Darth Sidious. If you look at the way Shin duels Sabine in the first episode, she does have a lot of traits that are familiar with Shi-Cho. Form 1, the Determination form, was the first of the 7 forms of lightsaber combat, and was developed during the transitional period within the Jedi from ancient metal swords to lightsabers. In combat, lightsaber form 1 was described as wild and raw, relying on deliberate tactics and being primarily aimed towards disarming rather than injuring foes, in keeping with the Jedi philosophy, although this could be turned up to be more aggressive. Shi-Cho was specialized towards engaging multiple opponents, and the wide sweeping motions being ideally suited towards attacking multiple adversaries. However, Form 1 was not as useful against a single opponent. What makes Form 1 especially interesting is it's one of the lightsaber forms that actually pushes emotion and the dark side quite a bit. So much so that many of the Jedi Council members were worried that Kit Fisto was pushing the form too far and was giving more into this wild and animalistic nature. But going back to Ahsoka, Form 1 makes sense for both of these practitioners to utilize, and again, the opening stance of both duelists is in fact the Shi-Cho variant. But it doesn't end here. In the last episode when Sabine was training with Hu Yang, she at one point adopted the opening stance of Xian, raising her lightsaber above her head in an attempt to create a move known as the Avalanche Strike. This is important because Ahsoka Tano also adopts this move against the Inquisitor, with Ahsoka being a master of Xian as well as Ataru. But anyway, my friends, what are your thoughts on this? And what are your thoughts on the little subtleties in lightsaber combat that are laced throughout Ahsoka, and the attention to detail if this is true? Do you believe that Shin and Sabine will actually engage in Form 1 lightsaber combat, them both likely being fairly new to the practice in general? Also, what are your thoughts on the brief overview of Shi-Cho that we went over? As always, my friends and acolytes, thank you so much for visiting our archives, and may the Force be with you.